Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about this latest Nintendo Switch 2 leak that is suggesting that Nintendo's 2025 is going to be absolutely huge. Like, I mean record-breaking huge. And there's even another leaker out there that might be helping to fuel this fire just a bit more, suggesting that 2025 is going to be even better than 2017, which, from where we're at right now, from what we know right now, what's officially been announced, that seems a little hard to believe, but considering what's being said here, we could be in for some pretty exciting stuff next year, so that's what I want to get into today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and if you are unsure, watch through this video and then consider subscribing and hitting that bell. So the leaker in question goes by the name Ninspider on Famiboards, and they provided this very cryptic message which we will be getting into in a moment here. But what I would like to do first is simply speak on the credibility of Ninspider, because they don't post very often on Famiboards, but when they do, we all think it absolutely means something. This is the same user that talked about magnets being a big part of Switch 2 before anyone else, before the Vandal reports, before the MobaPad accessory leaks, before other reports that insiders suggested that magnets would be a thing for Switch 2. But it goes just beyond being the first to tell us about the magnetic Joy-Cons. They also indicated in advance that the release date for Emil the Smiling Man would be very close to the Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase. And most recently, they put out a doodle that we've discussed already that includes a bigger dock and a U-shaped kickstand on the actual tablet for the Switch 2. And what's being presented here has actually been corroborated by other places, like Video Games Chronicle and Nate the Hate. At least in the sense that they've said they've heard and or seen similar things. So the point is, we have very little reason to doubt Ninspider from everything they've shown so far. So we definitely think this is absolutely worth having a conversation about, and a lot of us think it's likely true. Of course, take it with a grain of salt because you never know for sure. But let's now get into this message here. So this is this insane message. You might look at this and think it's just a whole bunch of nonsense. However, when we take this message and we decode it, base 64, right? It says this: the initial stock quantity has been finalized, and the factory will plan production accordingly. I can't disclose the exact number, but for the US market alone, it's roughly 2.5 times the volume from March 2017. So in March 2017, when the Switch launched, Nintendo sold 2.74 million Switch units. And so what's being suggested here is that roughly 2.5 times that number has been put together. Now, where there's maybe some room for interpretation is they say, but for the US market alone, it's roughly 2.5 times the volume from March 2017. So what I guess I'm wondering here, do they mean 2.5 times the volume of 2.74, or just 2.5 times the volume of whatever was sold in the United States back then? No matter how you spin this, this would be extremely impressive. This would lead to a historic launch. Now, of course, Nintendo would need to sell through, so we'll see how well they actually sell, but Nintendo appears to be absolutely ready to meet demand. The president of Nintendo said this a while back: as a countermeasure against resale, we believe that the most important thing is to produce a sufficient number to meet customer demand, and this idea has not changed since last year. So this has been Nintendo's plan for a while, to produce a great deal of Switch 2 units. It may be why for a few months now we've been hearing about a ramp up of Switch 2 parts. It doesn't look like we've gotten any evidence of Switch 2 actually going into full-on production yet, although it seems like we're really close, and with this latest info here, I'm definitely wondering, okay, is this finally the time where Switch 2 goes into mass production? It looks like we have The screens, the chips, everything is being put into warehouses, and they're about ready to start putting everything together into one piece, one place, one box. And this is interesting because it does have implications for how long we wait until the console comes out, how long we wait until the console is revealed. And there's certainly flexibility there. We don't know exactly when. We've been predicting all year that it'll be revealed this year, and that hasn't happened yet. We're already past the shareholders meeting of this month. Many people now think it's very unlikely that Nintendo would reveal the console this calendar year. So maybe wait until January. We're not sure. But either way, this information has some strong implications, I would say. Because it shows Nintendo has a confidence that they're going to be able to sell out these units. But it also shows that Nintendo is putting in a lot of prep work to make sure that the launch of Switch 2 goes over really well. Something interesting. When I go back to Nintendo's fiscal earnings release back in March of 2017, when that fiscal year ended, this came out in April of that year, they said, we are planning to ship 10 million units of Nintendo Switch hardware in the fiscal year ending March 2018. But what's funny about that is that Nintendo sold well more than that in that fiscal year. They sold over 15 million units for that fiscal year, and by March 2018, they were at 17 plus. So they sold an additional 5 million more than expected. And so I wonder if that has something to do with why Nintendo is preparing so much Switch 2s so early on. Nintendo changed everything with the Switch. Their level of popularity has increased dramatically. So now they probably have a very different perspective on the kind of success they could see in that first year. What if we could be looking at 20 million Switch 2s sold in that first year? That would be impressive, and Switch 2 would be pacing faster than Switch 1, and that would also mean that a lot of third parties would be adopting more quickly. Or perhaps we should look at it a different perspective. Perhaps the industry as a whole is already anticipating this strong of a launch, and so support is gonna be there very early on regardless. Which brings me to my next point here. Recently, another potential leaker, Nashweedle, said this on Twitter. 2025 is greater than 2017. Now, they're not even calling this Leak Express, this may just be their opinion, but I think most of us know what they're getting at here. They're suggesting that the launch of Switch 2, its launch year, is going to be better than the launch year of Switch 1. And many of us consider 2017 to be one of the greatest years in gaming. At least for Nintendo, it was pretty much unprecedented. We saw Breath of the Wild, we saw Super Mario Odyssey. Both of these games were up for Game of the Year in so many different award shows. Both of these games are 25 plus million sellers. But in this same year, we also saw a launch for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which has sold over 65 million copies. But then we have other fantastic games like Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, one of my favorite games, and others, Pokken Tournament Deluxe, Fire Emblem Warriors, Snipperclips, 1-2 Switch. It was an insane period of time where we saw so many tremendous Nintendo games come out there. I didn't even bring up Splatoon 2, that's another huge one that I would be upset if I did not mention. Oh, and ARMS as well. It was an incredible year. Many think it is the best year in Nintendo history. I kinda lean in that direction. I have a hard time thinking of a year that is just objectively better than 2017. And so to say that 2025 will be better, at least from the perspective of Nintendo, that's a bit hard for me to believe. Maybe they're just talking about 2025 overall compared to 2017 overall as a gamer. That might be more understandable. We're expecting some pretty significant releases next year, like Grand Theft Auto 6 for example. But what if Grand Theft Auto 6 comes to Nintendo Switch 2? A lot of people doubt it would, or at least not early on, but what if it does? What if Monster Hunter Wilds comes to Nintendo Switch 2 as well? These are huge games that are coming out next year that are going to really help next year be a tremendous year. But from the perspective of Nintendo, I feel like this is a bit of an uphill battle because Switch launched in March. And given that Nintendo hasn't announced the Switch 2 yet, not with a proper reveal, it seems very unlikely that the Switch 2 is going to launch in March. And so how late into the year do we expect Switch 2 to come out? I personally still think the first half of 2025 is pretty reasonable. But with the more months that pass, the less likely it is that the first year Switch 2 would be better than the first year Switch 1, because that's less months where less games can come out. But we think about the games we already know about, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, Pokemon Legends EA. Both those games are going to be absolutely huge for Nintendo. And while they're going to be Switch 1 games, Switch 2 we already know will be backwards compatible. And there may even be some enhancements for those games that make them even more relevant on the Switch 2. And we're expecting 3D Mario, maybe also Mario Kart. If those come out in 2025 as well, that's going to really help for the year to be pretty impressive. An actual brand new Mario Kart, an actual brand new 3D Mario, those will definitely make a big difference. But there's other potentialities as well. What is Molosoft working beyond just Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition? Could we also see that next year, or do we have to wait a bit longer? What about the next Splatoon, the next Animal Crossing, the next Smash Brothers? Some of these could possibly come out next year as well. So next year, Nintendo could have a huge lineup, but it does kind of depend on when it releases. But if we're hearing about production being finalized from Ninspider, that bodes pretty well for the console to come out in the first half of the year, I would say. Although I don't know exactly what it means in terms of timing. Does that mean mass production is about to start? Does that mean mass production has already started? And if so, how long is it going to take them to get all these units ready? I will say that we know that in 2017, Nintendo was able to up Switch production to 2 million a month. So with the knowledge Nintendo has now, they likely are prepared for similar levels of success, if not greater. So they may also be ready to jump into that level of production speed, 2 million Switch 2s a month. And as we discussed already, they've been doing a lot of prep work with this ramp up of parts being in warehouses. So let's say production starts in December, 2 million in December, 2 million in January, 2 million in February. That's already 6 million. They could conceivably have over 6 million systems ready for an April launch. That's just a hypothetical. I don't know exactly how it's going to pan out. Maybe we have to wait until May or June, or maybe we have to wait even longer, as a lot of people want to believe. But at least according to this leak here, we're in for a huge 2025 from Nintendo, and that's exciting. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.